Our adventure in the Caribbean island known as the Island of a Thousand Blessings starts right now. These steps are marked by stories that are still vivid in the walls of the Castle San Felipe del Morro in San Juan, Puerto Rico. We follow that historic path for a week to explore the Caribbean island, and that adventure starts here in Old San Juan. As we made our way into the castle, we were welcomed by the refreshing Atlantic winds that once brought Christopher Columbus to the island that was immediately claimed by Spain upon his arrival in 1493. The San Juan Bay became a strategic point to maintain power in the Caribbean and continue with a discovery expedition across the New World. El Morro was built on the tip of San Juan to protect the city. The 6-level fort that sits 145 feet above sea level was named in honor of Spain's King Philip II. El Morro went through different phases of construction throughout history, from the time it was first constructed by Spain until it was occupied by the US Army in the late 1800s.
From 1535, more or less, that it started to be constructed, up to precisely the 17th century, when it was a very important part of the construction process, and it ended in the 18th century. And we have it here today, still standing, still strong. A privilege to have it here in Puerto Rico. It's precisely the biggest fort under the American flag.
Bueno, el Morro era un ente militar, era para servicio militar. Aquí lo que había eran soldados. No había, por ejemplo, familia de soldados. Era simplemente el soldado era el que vivía acá. O en tiempos de paz ni siquiera vivía acá. Se arrejuntaba o vivía, sí, lo que llamábamos arrejuntar. El soldado común y corriente que venía de España o era conscripto aquí en Puerto Rico, se arrejuntaba con alguna doña y se iban a vivir en una casita alrededor de las murallas de San Juan. Sí, así era. Venía un momento de peligro, vente, y tenías que venir a servir. Solamente cuando en época de peligro era que había soldados permanentemente viviendo dentro del castillo.
This area right here is where the soldiers back in the 1700s spent most of their time. In average, they got about 3 pounds of food. The food was prepared here in El Morro. If you come back here and take a look, this was what the kitchen looked like back then. The main mission for historians like Denise, Ramon, and Luis on the fort today is to preserve the history and share the legacy with the thousands who visit El Morro. So, you guys are here in El Morro today. Beautiful there in San Juan. First time here?
Yes.
What is it like?
It's absolutely gorgeous. I love seeing the ocean and the wind's all nice and breezy.
Okay, where are you guys from?
Georgia. My mom and my dad are originally from Puerto Rico.
Oh, so what does it feel like to come, to San Juan and kind of experience all that history that we have in our blood?
It's amazing. Like, it always feels like home when I come and visit because all of my family lives here on the island and we're the only one who lives in the States. So coming here is always like home. No matter where we are in the States, this is always home.
Okay. Do you guys like history or?
I do, but we haven't really learned anything about like the Morro yet. But just seeing it and from what my mom's told me, it's pretty interesting.
I'm dressed as a member of the Puerto Rican militia from the late 18th century. This is because we are representing the militia that helped defend the island of Puerto Rico against our last great British invasion. In 1797, the British, that at that time they were the most powerful nation in the world, they had just taken over the island of Trinidad and they came and invaded Puerto Rico. Here in San Juan, we had the professional soldiers. They were called the Fixed Regiment of Puerto Rico. But because of the magnitude of that attack, they had to call for help from the Puerto Rican militia. It was just like our National Guard today, more or less the same thing. Men from all over the island that they had military training. They came to San Juan to help repel that invasion. And I'm dressed in that fashion. Here at El Morro, we have an educational program designed precisely to that, to help our Puerto Rican islanders and visitors to learn about that invasion. And we fire this 3-pound cannon to help them know how the defense of the island back then took place, how different military things were back then.
Yeah, it really does take you back to that time because we were downstairs getting some video and we heard the blast.
You had heard it.
And I told my photographer, I was like, what was that? And so I'm glad it was this and it wasn't something else. It is really hot here, so
Yes.
I'm sure it is an honor to be able to wear this and represent, 500 years of history?
Right. It is an honor, a privilege also. And it is hot, but I'm sure I'm a little bit cooler than you are because it's made of natural fibers. And when you sweat, it stays inside and the little breeze that comes around keeps you kind of cool. So it's not that bad as it looks.
Maybe we should wear one of those when we go around the island.
Right. Well, they were quite intelligent back then. We don't realize it, but they knew what they were into.
You're watching UTVS, local TV for the Granite City.
Tu única opción de noticias en español en la ciudad de Granito.
Dándole una voz a la comunidad hispana.
Estamos comprometidos a brindarle toda la información que usted necesita.
Acompáñenos.
Y escúchelo aquí primero. UTVS News en español, el único ámbito de noticias en español en el estado de Minnesota.
You're watching UTVS, local TV for the Granite City.
So this was used for quick access for the soldiers back in the day then, huh? El Morro was the strongest weapon in the San Juan Harbor, but when the enemy came, it was time to protect it. These historians from the University of Puerto Rico are not here to fight, but they take us back in time and show us how the Puerto Rican militia fired one of these cannons to protect the fort.
Bien, este es un cañón de campaña, es el cañón que se lleva al campo, ¿no? Al campo de batalla. Por eso es que tiene las ruedas grandes para poderse mover rápidamente y con más facilidad que los cañones del castillo. El cañón tiene dos piezas principales, ¿no? Que es lo que sería la cureña, que es la pieza de madera, y el cañón en sí. El calibre del cañón se mide a base del peso de la bala. Este es aproximadamente 2,5 libras, 2,5 a 3 libras.
¿250 libras?
No, esto se llamaría un cañón de a 2 libras o de a 3 libras. Ese es el calibre. Antes no era medida. Era
lo que pesaba la bala.
Lo que pesaba la bala, exacto. Y se hace una rutina particular para asegurarse primero de que estuviese limpio, de que no hubiese ninguna ceniza encendida. Después se cargaba, se atacaba con una pieza para llevar la carga lo más atrás posible, se ponchaba el cartucho con un estilete, una varilla de bronce, que es esta que está aquí. Y se echaba pólvora que salía de algo parecido a esto, como un cuerno. Nosotros utilizamos una mecha por cuestión de seguridad más contemporánea. Después se traía el botafuego, que es la pieza de acá atrás, y con eso se encendía la pólvora o la mecha en este caso. Los colores rojos, pues es de la artillería, ¿no? Ese es el color típico de la artillería, el rojo y el bronce en los botones. En este caso el rojo del uniforme nuestro es por la milicia. Sí,
No se usa la bala por regulaciones federales y por seguridad, por supuesto, y por conservar este hermoso castillo, porque eso podría salir volando, lo que llaman las troneras. Ajá. Podrían salir volando si usáramos balas y podría causar un accidente bien serio. O sea que por seguridad más bien es que no se está usando. Aunque en Estados Unidos, por ejemplo, los recreadores en ciertas situaciones de recreación histórica utilizan la bala. Por supuesto, con todas las medidas de seguridad posibles para que no vayan a causar ningún estropicio.
¿Y cuánto se tardan en prepararlo antes de que lancen?
Bueno, en una situación normal, en combate, en aquella época, en menos de 1 minuto debería estar preparado el cañón. Lo que pasa es que nosotros aquí, para demostración, lo hacemos de una manera lenta, cosa que el público pueda ver cada uno de los pasos. Y lo hacemos de la forma más ceremoniosa posible, ¿ves? Porque en la realidad sería todo mucho más rápido y algunos de los pasos se acortarían. Okay. Pero aquí lo hacemos bien lento, bien ceremonioso, para que el público pueda ver y entender cada uno de los pasos que estamos haciendo para disparar el cañón.
Sí, porque aquí no están combatiendo con el enemigo.
Aquí estamos más bien enseñando. Nuestro propósito es educativo y enseñar.
¿Y como en cuántos minutos hacen el otro? And when we asked how much longer until the next demonstration, we found out more historic details that go into this recreation of history.
Esta es una reproducción de un reloj de finales del siglo XVIII.
Wow.
Y nos faltan alrededor de 4 minutos. Si lo comparamos con un celular, el celular probablemente tenga 2 minutos atrasado, porque todos los celulares del mundo están con la misma hora. Pues, del mundo, me refiero de nuestro uso horario que llaman, ¿no? Aquí, por ejemplo, si él tiene su celular, que son las 3 de la tarde, el de ellas dice las 3 y el de todo el mundo son las 3. Pero para nosotros que estamos recreando la historia, nos tenemos que dejar llevar por el celular de la época.
Eso de verdad.
De hecho, este tipo de reloj, que es una reproducción del siglo XVIII, se estuvo utilizando normalmente en cualquier parte del mundo hasta prácticamente los años 50, principios de los 60. Claro, más moderno, con los números en números romanos, arábigos y no romanos, pero más o menos bien parecido a esto.
Ustedes aquí están de verdad que recreando la historia detalladamente del reloj, la ropa.
Se supone que para poder intervenir en sitios así como la interpretación de los castillos, tengamos que ser lo más estrictos en las cuestiones de historia. Ellos nos supervisan, que lo cumplamos, nosotros mismos nos supervisamos, que lo hagamos lo mejor posible. Esa es nuestra función y para poder enseñar. Y como ya le explicó, nuestros uniformes son también del final del siglo XVIII y son los uniformes que usaban las milicias disciplinadas de Puerto Rico, que era cualquier ciudadano del país que estaba obligado a defender a la isla en caso de peligro.
watching UTVS, local TV for the Granite City. UTVS News in Espanol, the only Spanish newscast in Minnesota, right here on UTVS. You're watching UTVS, local TV for the Granite City.
Al cañón. Prepárense para ejercicio. Bendícenos Santa Bárbara. Ganado al cañón.
Watching UTVS, local TV for the Granite City. UTVS News in Espanol, the only Spanish newscast in Minnesota, right here on UTVS.
UTVS, local TV for the Granite City.
UTVS, local TV for the Granite City.
Baila bamba, baila bamba, baila bamba. Para bailar la bamba se necesita una poca de gracia. Una poca de gracia, otra cosita, y arriba, y arriba. Ahí arriba, y arriba, y arriba, y yo no soy marinero. Yo no soy marinero, por ti seré, por ti seré, por ti seré. Baila bamba, baila bamba, baila bamba. Soy marinero, soy capitán, soy capitán, soy capitán. Baila bamba, baila bamba, baila bamba.
In 1898, Puerto Rico became a part of the United States under the Treaty of Paris. At that time, the walls that divided El Morro with the rest of the city came down to allow the population to grow outside of this military fort.
En 1897 se empezaron a destruir las murallas para dar paso a que creciera la población. Al lado del castillo de San Cristóbal, si ustedes han estado allá o van para allá, estaba la puerta principal que daba hacia la tierra, que llaman puerta de tierra. Todo eso, esa parte en 1897 se destruyó para que la ciudad pudiera crecer hacia donde estaría ahora el Hotel Caribe Hilton.
Outside of those walls, life found its own path into what Puerto Rico is today. Nearly 4 billion people live in the island that has been expanding politically and economically over the decades. In 1952, Puerto Rico became a Commonwealth of the United States, and that has been a controversial topic as many are fighting for Puerto Rico to become the 51st state of the U.S.
El Estado Libre Asociado is just a pretty name. It's like we're called a Commonwealth. It's just a pretty name. But if you look at all the characteristics, the political characteristics, we're a colony. And that's one of the things that the U.S. Will hate is when they go to all these major conferences, international conferences, and they talk about their Commonwealth. You know, immediately someone will say, "No, what do you mean Commonwealth? You have a colony. It's called Puerto Rico." So that's kind of that's like the hidden baby, you know, where, oh, well, we don't want to call them a colony, so we'll just call them a Commonwealth.
Puerto Rico, currently a U.S. Commonwealth, voted in favor of statehood for the first time on Tuesday. Voters rejected their current status as a Commonwealth by a 54% to 46% margin. The majority is 61%, chose statehood as the alternative. However, U.S. Congress will decide whether or not statehood will be granted. Currently, Puerto Ricans are unable to vote for president and do not have representation in the Senate or House of Representatives. Orlando Rivera, a political analyst from Puerto Rico, shares the importance of Puerto Rican statehood.
El beneficio sería tener 2 senadores en el Congreso y 5 o 6 o 7 representantes en la Cámara. Ese es el beneficio principal, tener voz y tener voto. Porque ahora mismo Puerto Rico tiene un comisionado residente en Estados Unidos. Él va al Congreso, habla, pero el momento de votar, el señor no tiene voto.
Democrats in the island under the Partido Popular Democrático don't support statehood. However, they think the Commonwealth, known as the Estado Libre Asociado, needs a few changes.
Yo creo en el Estado Libre Asociado de Puerto Rico y creo en la unión permanente con los Estados Unidos. Pero no creo que Puerto Rico deba convertirse en Estado, sino permanecer como estamos, como Estado Libre Asociado de Puerto Rico. Ciertamente los Estados libristas estamos de acuerdo y convencidos que el ELA tiene que ir transformándose y todos sabemos que hay espacio para mejorar. Pero yo creo, ¿verdad?, en la unión permanente con los Estados Unidos. Yo siento mucho orgullo de que Puerto Rico sea un Estado Libre Asociado de Puerto Rico. Cuando miramos a nuestro alrededor, todo lo que nosotros hemos logrado ha sido gracias al Estado Libre Asociado de Puerto Rico. Y sí, cuando te hablo de transformación, entiendo que el ELA tiene que transformarse un poco más para que podamos tener quizás más poderes, nosotros poder tener un poco más de autonomía fiscal. Eso se ha discutido ampliamente por los diferentes partidos políticos y yo creo que el gobierno de Puerto Rico debe ir moviéndose hacia eso.
We are never going to be well defined until that third option is, given that third option, then I have to make a decision, Yeah. And I'm not anti-U.S., I live here, but I would like to see more authority for Puerto Rico, I mean, right now, Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico, it's a weird relationship because in Puerto Rico, I cannot vote for the U.S. president, but all I have to do is hop on a plane, come to the U.S., and immediately I can vote for the president. So it's a really weird relationship that we have, and people think Puerto Rico is a third world country, and Puerto Rico is like going to any other state here. I mean, we have all the same law. In fact, our Constitution is a replica, a copy of the U.S. Constitution. You know, the U.S. acquired Puerto Rico after the Spanish-American War in the 1800s. President Roosevelt back then declared that all instruction in Puerto Rico was to be in English in the schools. Teachers had to be trained. You could not be a teacher if you didn't know English. And to settle that, they even had where they would take Puerto Ricans, bring them to the mainland, teach them English and prepare them as teachers, and then send them back. Finally, the government gave up because the resistance was so big by the Puerto Ricans that they just decided to give up on that plan. In 1917, we became U.S. citizens. And that's what a lot of people don't know here in the States either, that we are U.S. citizens. And that also has created some complications for us in the sense that, like African Americans, when they go to Africa and they talk about Africa being their motherland and this and that, the first thing they're told is, you're not African, you're American. Same thing happens to us Puerto Ricans when we go and talk to people in South America, in Latin America, and we say we're from Puerto Rico. They say, well, you're not Latin, you're American. So we get that same treatment there, you know, which is very interesting. And if you say New Yorican, then it's even worse. So, you know, we're like at the end, you know, at the pit. So.
Now that we talked a little bit about history and politics, our trip takes us to the south of the island to explore Puerto Rico through the eyes of the people in the town of Salinas. Next week on our adventure in Puerto Rico,
we're basically taking a sail here around Bahía de Salinas, which is the bay of Salinas, Puerto Rico.
We arrive in the town of Salinas and meet with our friend Juan. He shows us what it's like to live in the Caribbean Sea. You don't want to miss it.
Watching UTVS, local TV for the Granite City.